Go again.
Welcome back, everybody, to Hearthstone Grandmasters. You're just in time for the final match of the day here for Asia Pacific. If you haven't joined us yet, this is the final match for Division B, our top 8 for this week and the final week of Swiss. After this week, we're going to transition over to round robin, where half of the players will be in Division A, where they are very likely to get to playoffs. The other half of the players, the lowest performing half, will be in Division B, where they are much more likely to get relegated. Scary, scary stuff indeed. Thankfully for both of our two players left here in Alutemu and Kin, they're guaranteed Division A. They are feeling very, very happy, easy breezy here in this final series. It's really just about proving that they, or their countries, in fact, are where they deserve to be here in Hearthstone Grandmasters. Alutemu, if he takes the win, would make it the first week where we have all 3 Japanese Grandmasters in the top 4. But like you said, King could make it a half and half with Hong Kong and Japan.
And that would be pretty fun to see, because going off of, again, the stats from Ranlet, very, very helpful contributor to the community, at least for our stats and how the countries have been performing. I do believe that Hong Kong and Taiwan have been near the bottom, at least in performers, and that might be a side effect of being grouped with Japan and Korea. So if you're up against the highest win rate countries, probably that's going to drop the win rate for the rest of the APAC regions. But it seems like Hong Kong has a chance to, completely show everyone up and just prove that they have got what it takes, as much as all the other players we've been seeing.
Yeah, I will say that obviously Blitzchung's lackluster performance the last couple of weeks will have been dragging that score down quite significantly. But this week, now that we've actually got to see him play for the first time, I have been incredibly impressed by Blitzchung's performance. I thought he was playing some very, very smart Hearthstone, seeing quite a lot of lines that I didn't really see. I guess that doesn't mean he's that great, but at least means something. And in my opinion, he's been playing very well. Whereas on the other side, a little bit less flashy, but 3 top 8s in a row. I think Kin has been just playing some extremely consistent and solid Hearthstone.
Yeah, and I think, out of a lot of the players, haven't really been agreeing or calling out Kin's plays as being extremely brilliant. But it seems like he takes consistent lines over and over, and he seems to understand these matchups. And he finds small things that we often miss. One thing that really sticks out to me is how he played Galakrond Priest, even in the earlier weeks.
Yes, I agree. That was definitely what felt like one of his strongest decks, and transitioning that over to the Resurrect Priest that he's also bringing at the moment. I think he's very strong with those slightly slower anti-aggro styles of decks, but he's clearly not showing any slip-ups with the aggro decks as well, because that has just been the name of the game. It hasn't been particularly brilliant, like you said. It's just not really making mistakes for the most part. I can't really think of very many at all. Whereas even some of our best performers, like Glory, in second place at the moment in terms of points, only to surrender, has been making a few slip-ups along the way. Slight technical misplays, roping out. While for the most part it's been very strong, I think he could tighten that up. Whereas Kin, as I said, very, very consistent indeed. Which means up against Alutemu, he will have his work cut out for him up against Kin.
True enough. I think you bring up a very good point about Glory, that he's had his ups and downs, but at his peak, could be very brilliant. And speaking of peaking, Alutemu, in last year's Grandmasters, we definitely saw him rise to the top, at least in the first season. And this could be his chance to cement that reputation if he could just take another win here. So despite being locked in for Division A, there's still some pride on the line for sure.
Very nice starting mulligan there for Kin. The curve, potentially, I suppose, of Breath of the Infinite into Holy Nova should obliterate pretty much any board that Alutemu is able to throw down. Archmage Vargoth, though, maybe does change how you're going about that a little bit.
Depending on whether he can pick up a way to stick it onto the board, it seems like it may not change so much, but at least it gives him something to do after the board has been cleared. Because sometimes we've seen from Priest that, yes, they've got all this removal, but sometimes, since they don't have much card draw in the deck, they just don't have a way to kill the opponent. And then sometimes, especially if they're Demon Hunter, they just get enough time to turn it down against the Priest.
I really like the use of Hand of Adal over Henchclan Hogsteed here, because it likely ends you up with the same amount of Murlocs for Cold Light Seer on the following turn.
Right.
And it's just a little bit less weak to the Breath of the Infinite if you go with this line. I think I probably would have preferred buffing the 1/1 because it's less vulnerable to Penance then. But I'm not entirely sure. Actually, I think I would prefer buffing the 1/1 there. I think it just spreads the damage a little bit more evenly.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that as well. And it's not just Penance, it's also Holy Smite.
Good point.
Of which Kin is running one copy of it. And then if you cast the spell, we'll get rid of the health buffs, but isn't quite enough yet to create a very clean Holy Nova for the next turn.
I agree, it's not perfect. It's probably good enough. At least to keep him alive for the moment.
Actually, instead of Holy Nova, is it ever the Breath of the Infinite just to be able to put in the hero power? Mana efficient? Looks like he agrees. And the Scale Lord.
I think this has the nice double benefit of, you get the heal right away anyway, and it sets up more likely for Archmage plus Breath of the Infinite on 7 rather than on 8 with the Holy Nova, which, after the Kartut Defender comes down, will probably be the play.
Agreed on that one, but the immediate problem is, of course, this Scale Lord, and this just kind of seems like one of those games where Priest fell a little bit flat. It's not all over because he's got the Kartut to stall for a little bit, but Alutemu has the Hogsteed and a weapon and 8 damage on board that can go face after the R2 trades into the first half.
Kin was definitely insta-reaching for the Kartut Defender there, but looked like in the end he was maybe deviating away a little bit, looking at Master Spell plus Penance this turn instead. Overall, this probably saves him a significantly higher amount of health, so I'm bored with it.
On Alutemu's side, definitely want to see the weapon and the Hench Clan come down. Probably wants to develop something like the Dormant Minion, because he's expecting the best answer to be some type of AoE from Kin. So he wants to develop something that doesn't get caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, Consecration was definitely worth looking at, but I think the heal just puts Kin at slightly too high of a health total. So I agree. I do like this way around.
Kin will heal back up to 15, and then Alutemu can immediately deal 11. So that's just... I mean, if Kin has to go for the Archmage Vargoth Breath of the Infinite, it's just not enough because it doesn't even clear the Scale Lord.
Right.
So is this just GG?
We'll have to see what comes off the top. Maybe, I don't know, Psychopomp or something can do it, but it looks like this board was just that little bit too resilient for Alutemu.
That is nuts! And we were talking about how much we like the Priest and questioned it being left up as compared to, say, Mage. But it's weird. It's not like Kin had a shortage of AoE this matchup. He was lacking, though, I guess, crucial things like Penance earlier or Holy Smite.
Yeah. The buffs were just a little bit too strong from Alutemu. Turn after turn, he had the Seer, the Felpin Navigator, and the Scale Lord to wrap things up at the end. And that is where Priest starts to struggle. If everything's low health, you clear it up with the Holy Nova, the Breath of the Infinite, whatever, and you are laughing all the way to the bank. But for now, that was a very clean game by Alutemu indeed.
Clean indeed. And I guess before we go to another break, I would like to ask you another trivia question because I messed up a while ago. Sorry, it's not going to be a break. It's just a trivia break.
Just trivia.
I messed up a while ago because I forgot to filter for minions only when I search for 7 mana cards in Hearthstone. So it's not actually 53. How many do you think it actually is?
You forgot to search for minions only, so you included spells?
Yes.
Oh.
Big difference.
35?
If this filter is not lying to me anymore, the answer is 40. So again, you're just, no more than 5 cards off. Pretty impressive. Yeah, it turns out it included all the Galakrons as well. So that's not something you can conjure into, although that would be very entertaining.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, this is, of course, for the the play earlier where Flurry went for a Conjurer's Calling on a 7-cost taunt minion, almost getting lethal, but running into Winged Guardian for the only way he could possibly lose that series, which was pretty entertaining to say the least. And it does mean, of course, that Alutemu is now here up against Kin in the decider match. And it also means that he is 1-0 up, taking a win with the Paladin. He now has to choose which one of his decks he doesn't want to queue with overall, given that he only has to win with 3 of them, and he has 4 left remaining. I feel like based on what we've seen from Alutemu so far, he will try and take a win with the Druid. He definitely likes the deck and feels comfortable with it. But I think you could make the argument that it is the weakest of the remaining decks.
In terms of matchups against what Kin has, it can definitely be argued because the stats do say that Druid has been struggling against Paladin, against Shaman. Actually, wouldn't say that it would struggle as much versus Priest because Priest just seems to run into that problem where the removal isn't as consistent as we would think it is. It seems like they need to draw at least 3 or 4 pieces of AoE to actually get there against Druid, but it's not actually going to be Druid for Alutemu, but for Kin.
Well, the Overgrowth is a great way to start things off. For Alutemu, the interesting decision here, I think, is actually rolling Fireball, because it's a pretty good answer to Glowfly if that comes down nice and early. You can clear off 4 of them, at the very least. I think you're holding on to Reno, just because it's one of your best cards.
I feel like Reno and rolling Fireball might be a little bit redundant because, well, they have similar effects of clearing off probably 3/4 of a Glowfly board or something like that. But if you point out Reno, suddenly the rolling Fireball is off curve. So maybe he'd rather look for something like ideally Zephyrus to get the Reno online earlier.
I do see the AI being kept. I mean, we were just talking earlier today about how we feel like that's not an especially powerful card to look for in the mulligan. But that was against Shaman, and this is against Druid. Yeah.
Right. You probably have more license to play AI in this matchup since you're not absolutely pressured to take down totems immediately.
I will crush your delusions of
Oh, this is a hand that is absolutely begging for a Zephyrus into Wild Growth with Reno, and now the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. But Alutemu will have to make do with just the regular 1 mana per turn. And I guess hope now, primarily, for a big spell. If he can hit a Blizzard or ideally a Power of Creation or a Deep Freeze, he should be in a great spot.
Ysera discarded. I guess in most panouts it's probably not a big deal, but I do think we've at least seen one Mage versus Druid game where the Ysera decided everything. I feel like it was Rivius in that first sweep where he brought it and nobody else was bringing it.
I think that could definitely be a big deal. If he could just slam that down in 2 turns' time, that means every card draw effect in his deck is potentially just a huge board in its own right.
Right, especially with the overflow online already. Anyway, Kin has hit the ever so crucial 7 mana point, but doesn't have the Mount Seller to capitalize.
Yeah.
Like he's taking another turn of ramp. And if he wants to, can cycle the Rising Winds, but it's looking like he's already just trying to empty the hand for the overflow, which I can definitely get behind.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
Dragon Caster doesn't have any proactive spells.
Yeah.
There. How awkward for Alutemu.
Pretty sure here that this is just a pass. With a a ping as well, obviously. Because the coin, you could use it here to curve 6 into 6. But you still want to be able to curve 9 into 9 a little bit later on would be very powerful as well.
Yeah, that seems like the best option because neither of us get their added benefit in this situation.
Yeah.
Unless he wants to play a free Frostball to the face.
What to do?
I mean, maybe he just wants to play Reno for the 6/6, for the 4/6. You could argue that Reno is not that powerful in this matchup because usually they're putting up boards that are too big for 10 damage to clear.
That would be a top 5 moments play if I've ever seen one, but I couldn't tell you if I agree with it.
Yeah.
It feels wrong. That's all I can say.
It does feel wrong to me as well. And Alutemu, despite toying with the idea and toying with our hearts as well there, is just going to throw down the ping in the end. It's just so powerful to go with the Dragoncaster next turn.
Outseller off the top. He can even cycle with Rising Wind if he wants, because it looks like there's going to be a lot of spells expended this turn.
Start with the Vate. You're always playing it, right?
I think so. Yeah. I guess you're almost always... Oh, is that a Griffin? No, it's not. No. I thought I heard a bit of it.
Griffin is not a core. Griffin is a shriek as it dives directly into the ground from above.
I thought I heard some squawking. But... there are a lot of avian species coming onto the board. Like the one Kin wants. Wait a second.
There's actually one avian species here.
With 3 specimens. Why are they always hitting the bingos? I feel like we've seen 3 griffins, 3 messenger ravens, 3...
It's the RDU special. Bingo every game.
Yeah. 3 silverback patriarchs. Right. So, the Dragoncaster can come down now with Blizzard. If the 5 health on the Raven makes it just that little bit awkward for Flame Strike. Problem is he's not dealing with the Mount Seller, so his efforts could just be wasted.
Big deal that he's not dealing with the Mount Seller, yeah.
Still, though, I think he's got to go for it.
What to do?
Is there any way he can try and set up lethal next turn by, like, cheesing out? If he goes for Frost Nova here instead, he never sets up lethal, does he?
Yeah, no. Especially since the taunt's in the way, he's got to sink damage into it.
Yeah. I was just wondering if he could, like, board lock, but it's not quite there.
Time runs out.
It looks like he's actually reaching for Reno instead. So this has potential. I couldn't tell you what the average is. I feel like maybe 4 minions cleared off. Hey, I did it.
Okay, yeah. I guess that was okay. That was okay. Didn't kill off the 4 health, 4 attack, sorry. Which is annoying.
I don't know about that compared to Blizzard, though.
Yeah.
Because now this just lets Kin trade these off. Or trade 1 off and then overflow and re-heal his bigger messenger Raven.
Yeah, it's true. The heal off overflow is disgusting, because otherwise Alutemu would be able to go Dragoncaster Flame Strike, coin, ping.
Yeah. There's also just possibility for Glowfly Soul of the Forest this turn.
Yeah.
This looks a little bit too juicy with the value from the heal. Even got Iron Bark for value trade on Reno if he wants. 1 Bog Beat. This is nuts.
You do, I think, have some incentive to hold back a little bit here, but when you get the Griffin...
I heard the right squawking this time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say he could hold back the Mount Seller, but oh my god. I guess the thinking is that Glowfly Swarm should be enough anyway.
And the Mukla as well. I guess the second Griffin isn't nearly as good, but you saw also the discipline from King to direct his Iron Bark onto the minion that's vulnerable to Flame Strike. Very well spotted.
So for Alutemu, the outs that I am spotting as it currently stands are, first of all, that he has enough freeze to curb him into turn 9, which of course allows for a top deck of the amazing Reno, primarily, but also to a somewhat lesser extent, Puzzle Box. But outside of that, I don't think these board clears are currently really getting there.
I think it can get there if he goes Dragoncaster Blizzard into Flame Strike for full mana next turn.
Okay.
Because he's seen an overflow, so I guess it's, I don't know, 7 cards left in deck. Maybe they heal back up, but it does put everything but the Mount Seller to within range of Flame Strike ping. And then he could just trade the 4/4 into the Mount Seller at that point.
This is kind of smart, just going for the Blizzard now, and then he can go for a 1 mana cheaper Flame Strike next turn, given that I don't think the Dragoncaster would make too much difference.
The difference is that it could help trade into the Flame Strike, but since he has I mean, into the Mount Seller post Flame Strike for the rest of the damage. But given he has Frostbolt and the caster could get cleared off by Crystal Power, etc., this works too, I think. If you're Kin, I mean, if he still had Ysera left, I might advocate for Overflow just to re-heal up his board out of Flame Strike range, but that would put him dangerously close to the bottom of his deck.
I mean, I'm thinking you start off with Crystal Power to heal one of your guys. I haven't entirely thought which, and then you go for a Soul of the Forest afterwards.
Yeah, that seems good.
I wait for no one.
Alternate line, though, that does completely dominate the board here and means Alutemu is, I don't know, the way I'm looking at it, kind of forced to go for a Frost Nova.
Well, he can do both if he wants. It involves using the coin.
Yeah.
But if you're going to Frost Nova, that means there's no reason to clear this turn anyway.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think if you're playing Frost Nova, what you're saying is that next turn you will get either Puzzle Box or Reno.
Yep.
Which I think is a valid line to pursue. Unless, actually, sorry, the play is Dragoncaster plus Power of Creation in addition to a Frost Nova and try and hit the counter lethal. Probably doesn't get there through the taunts, though.
I kind of like this from Alutemu. He board locks and puts enough damage onto the board where Flame Strike can clear things up, especially with the buffed ping.
True.
But now Kin can go off with the Soul of the Forest, and he has to know that Alutemu has been setting up for this.
But at the same time, that would mean going for Soul of the Forest on the turn that curves into Coin Amazing Reno.
You're right.
Which is the disaster.
My hand is too full.
He's gonna empty his deck and say, what I've got is enough. Or hope, at least. So this keeps enough resources in hand for post Reno to be Low Fly Soul. But there's no Reno for Alutemu, so
Dragoncaster, Flame Strike, and then Frostbolt Coin Ping allows for a clearing up of a lot of stuff here.
but not the Mount Sellers, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
Maybe one of them.
Yeah, it's just shy.
He's still gotta go for it though, otherwise he's just dead to Savage Roar. He's gotta clear as many things as possible.
I mean, he could just go for Deathwing off the Dragon Queen. That's always something to consider if he is just
Alright.
dead. Because he knows the cards are in hand. He knows that Savage Roar is in hand. So if he can calculate lethal, then maybe Flame Strike just never wins in the game.
Runs out on me. Ready for a show?
He can clear 3 minions and leave. Sorry, he can leave just 2 minions on the board, I believe, after the Gaia trades in. Yeah. So this survives to 1 Savage Roar.
11 plus 6 is 17. Hero power 18. Buff 20, as I count it. 21 with the Moonfire.
Yeah. Whoa! It's just short.
I think it's 1 damage off lethal. There are no charging 3-cost minions that could deliver lethal.
What to do?
No beasts, but he could get a porcupine.
A Porcupine, true. Good point.
Which wouldn't immediately die, but would make things very awkward for Alutemu, I suppose. And I wonder if he did all of that math in that short span of time. Because,
Mate, if I can do it, Kin can do it in a 10th of the time, I guarantee.
For sure.
And who knows, maybe I did it
Oh,
wrong.
I mean Alutemu, because it was really 2 discrete lines, right? It's either that or you go for the Deathwing. Ooh, the Zixor is exciting. It's
Zixor's insane!
offsets fatigue and gives him a good play for the next turn.
What on earth? That's an insanely good beast there. This is a whole extra wave of threats that Alutemu has to find an answer for.
Yep. As it stands, he doesn't even have answers for the current wave or the 2 Bullflies in hand.
Well, Kalagos is going to have to deliver.
Yeah.
The fate of the world hangs in the balance.
Any freeze or puzzle box.
Ooh!
It's the freeze. Keeps him alive for another turn. Just.
I have a question though. If Kin knew that he could put Alutemu to 1 and Alutemu's best outs outside of Reno were freeze, was he supposed to just go for the roar on that turn? And then just set up for a hero power lethal?
Yeah.
Granted, it's still a bunch more waves. Kin still looks like he's in a very, very good spot to win the game.
Okay, Reno off the top or puzzle box off the top.
Or Alex into Deathwing.
Rolling Fireball does not do it.
Well,
Rolling
he can
Fireball plus
rolling the
double
4
freeze.
minions on the right, yeah. Double freeze.
Keeps him alive at 1 health. I think if he does that.
Correct. Correct. Yet again. And does that ever give him time to play Alex?
I don't know if it gives him time to play Alex, but it potentially gives him time to draw Reno.
Correct, yes. I don't think any of the 8 drops get the 6 drops get there from Power of Creation.
I don't think so either.
It's really just between Deathwing off Alex, left hand Alex, or the Rolling Fireball. The annoying thing for Alutemu is that he leaves up the Mount Cellar in that case. So it's like there's free refills. You only want to get those in fast food restaurants.
Very nice, Gia.
Not
Very,
in
very nice.
Hearthstone.
Yeah, you can't get away with playing the Mana Saber. This is the only play, I think, that keeps Alutemu alive, guaranteed. 3 and 4 is 7, plus the hero power is 8. Oh my god. So close.
Does he not just go for it? I don't know. And
Well,
then
the fear is Reno, right? If Reno
Right.
comes down and heals for 5.
Yeah, I guess. Wait, but isn't this just bad to Reno as well?
Job done.
Yes.
Maybe he's gotten the read that there's no Reno, but if you have that read,
He's
are you
definitely got
supposed
the
to go
read.
But,
It's just playing around the top deck. This is the only chance here for Alutemu.
yeah, even Deathwing can't deal with the Death Rattles. That's gonna be game 2 to Kin. Very, very tense at the end there. That was such a complex endgame.
Really was. And the fact that there were actual outs there for Alutemu, despite being 1 damage off lethal 2 turns in a row, he still potentially could have won that game, is staggering. It wouldn't have been the most unlikely win he's got today after, what would it be, the 1 out of 43 you were saying, or 1 out of 40 that he
40.
got to hit the Winged Guardian earlier on today. Only a 1 out of 15 would have been required to hit that one, but still unlikely to happen, and a well-deserved win going to Kin.
True enough. And I'm really happy to see our series start off like this. Sorry, was that game 2 or game 1? Getting tripped up by
Game 2, I think there's a slight graphical error there. The
Okay.
Paladin has 1 for Alutemu.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So that does mean we have one of the bad decks in Shaman and Paladin out of the way on Alutemu's side, and then one of the, at least prior to this week, meta decks out of the way for Kin. So if we're talking about having to win with a bad deck, I feel like Alutemu still kind of has a leg up here.
I think I would agree with you there. It's not necessarily quite so cut and dry as that, because Paladin, despite being the weakest class, can have some good matchups, specifically arguably against the Druid from Alutemu, and also it would seem against the Shaman as well. So who knows? From Kin, we have seen him queue up the Paladin first before. I really wouldn't be too surprised if we do see him go for it now, and the Priest later on, and maybe just leave the Shaman unplayed.
I can see that happening for Kin. I think it's fair to say he's got Priest as his pet deck, probably one of the classes he's most comfortable piloting, even bringing it when not even half the players were bringing it in previous weeks, and it did not manage to perform against the Paladin. In terms of the build, including Holy Smite in the list should be a big boon to him.
It really will. The Resurrect version was looking a little bit weaker compared to maybe the Galakron version would have been against the Murloc Paladin specifically, because in the Galakron version you have more one-drops, and you have the Murloc Artificers that you can throw down a little bit earlier as well. But either way, we're jumping into the next game. We'll have to wait a little bit before we get to see the Priest come down from Kin, as I believe it is going to be, as I was saying, the Paladin. He thinks it's just kind of got better matchups across the board, despite its overall low power level.
But look at this hand. In terms of an overall game plan, Paladin, of course, just wants to curve out. And this is the hand to do it. Tidecaller ideally on... it's the ideal turn 1 play. Alutemu, if going off of how Possessi approached the mulligan, and we do know these guys practice together a fair amount, he actually tossed the removal against Shaman at least. Maybe it's a little bit more crucial to keep it against Paladin because those minions start with attack instead of just totems.
Yeah, I feel like the matchups where Druid is winning against Paladin is where it has these little removal spells, because the difference between killing off a Murloc and leaving it alive for, you know, the curve of Seer into Felfin Navigator into Scale Lord is just miles apart. But Alutemu agrees as well. He wants to be proactive here.
And it's still going to be okay, at least with removing this Tidecaller using Moonfire hero power. And he's got Bot Beam for the next thing. Maybe the thinking is that in the Druid deck, there's a lot of pieces of removal. If you think about Moonfire as a piece of removal on hero power, I think it's fair to say there's also the Wrath, the Crystal Powers, and the Bog Beams. So maybe it is more important to look for the proactive phase, namely Fungal Fortune Overgrowth, and know that you're likely to get back the removal in the mulligan.
It's definitely a valid line of thinking. I think here for Alutemu, we're looking at Hero Power Moonfire.
Waits for no one.
I guess there's consideration for Wrath for 1 and then Moonfire, or obviously just Wrath for 3. But I don't know, I just think Wrath is so much more flexible, and even though Moonfire works with Mount Seller later on, that is a long, long way down the line.
Correct. I think the only consideration for keeping Moonfire versus is because it's easier to ping off a Divine Shield with it, but very, very specific. It has to be this card exactly, or Scale Lord minions.
That is a top deck there for Alutemu. He's all of a sudden gone from a very lackluster hand with too many expensive or unactivatable cards into looking like he's got a very strong curve indeed.
Yeah, definitely seems that way. But Kin had put together a pretty strong curve for himself. I don't believe that Alutemu is running anything like Starfall, so he doesn't have to be afraid of even like Innervate Starfall. And Spike hasn't been in the deck for ages. So this board seems relatively safe to stick a Scale Lord onto.
Yeah, I think this is far and away the best line from Kin. It goes as wide as possible with the Murlocs, sticks the Scale Lord, potentially sticks a 1/1 poisonous Divine Shield Murloc, because apparently we're paying Battlegrounds here.
When did Kin become the curator? So does this now for Alutemu put him off the Mount Seller plan with only one activatable? I think it has to be Overflow.
Yeah, it's just not that good. He needs to find the second Bog Beam, Moonfire, Ironbark. Yeah.
Okay, potential. Put something together next turn, especially with the extra 1 mana to deal with the post Divine Shield little amalgam.
I think this is definitely an overdraw turn. It feels pretty bad, but none of these zero-cost spells are doing really much of anything. I would much rather wait till next turn.
Correct. I think they're way more useful to get immediate value off of the Mount Seller.
Like, if he knew what the top card of his deck was in an Innovate, he could go for Bog Beam on the 1/1 Divine Shield here. This is a risk he's playing. It has potential upside with drawing another 0-mana spell. But I don't know. I think overall, I prefer just saving it there.
I agree. It also gets punished by Hand of the Doll or Blessing of Kings
Yeah.
because he's lost the piece of removal that deals 3. He wanted the crystal power to remove the shield. I guess still would have gotten out of range anyway with the additional health buff, but I don't know about that.
Well, it all comes down to this for Alutemu. First instinct is definitely still that it's a Mount Seller turn, but having said that, he kind of just dies if he goes for that with how this is shaping out.
If he rolls a Griffin, all is not lost.
That can't be your answer to literally everything, Gia.
Well, what is his best answer? Look at this hand. Okay, is it like Glowfly and taunt up a Glowfly? I guess.
You could then go Fungal Fortunes with the Mount Seller next turn and hope that he hits,
Okay.
double Innovate and a Bog Beam.
Yeah, but is this not just lethal? He can Wrath away with 2/3 and heal up for 5, but there's Hench Clan, Blessing of Kings, and Velvet. Oof.
Time waits for no one.
If he heals back up to 19 and removes the 2/3, there will be 10 damage on the board after the taunt. After the poisonous hits the taunt, and then Blessing of Kings is just.
Well, I think if he... no, he
that's
survives,
without
right?
the heal. Yeah, that's without the heal. My bad. So let's go for it.
I think he actually survived at 1 even with the heal. Maybe he exactly died, but yeah, like
he did.
he
He exactly
manages to
died.
survive this way. Okay. Yes, right.
Okay, so does that mean now for Kin that he doesn't necessarily go for the Kings this turn? Maybe he tries to spread around the buffs by using the Felfin. Yeah.
Seems smart, still means Alutemu is significantly on the back foot, but I think his play on the previous turn very wisely gave him a chance of pulling this back here. If he can get a seriously impressive Fungal Fortune, we're looking at a potential game here.
And a small optimization from Kin there was to not damage his poisonous minion, give it the best chance of surviving to potentially kill off a Mount Seller. And it's got to be a pretty seller here.
Is there any consideration that you don't go Mount Seller? Like, I don't even know what you could hit off the Rising Winds.
I don't know either. It's gonna have to be all the 0-cost spells from here. And a couple of Griffins.
Yeah.
All expensive.
Yeah.
So we
That
can
is
remove
gonna
4
wrap it.
damage at best. Yeah, so that is just gonna be the game. Not from what Alutemu can see, because there's only 14 on board, but the Blessing of Kings will just...
A very interesting dynamic that we are seeing here develop in the Druid versus Aggro matchups, be it Shaman or Paladin, where Alutemu, and it looks like the rest of his practice partners can very much focus on proactive gameplay, focusing on your own game plan. Let them develop a little bit, but try and ramp into a powerful Mount Seller or Glowfly as quick as possible. Whereas some of the other players are focusing more on removal. It didn't work out there for Alutemu, but I definitely still feel like there's something working with his strategy there. Maybe if he was able to hit an earlier Glowfly, that would have been enough to carry him to victory.
Yeah, I think that if anything, they've been very consistent, which is what I like to see because I always learn from players that stick to their guns. And if they have a strong opinion on this is the line that wins, then you can have a larger sample size at least to compare with the players that say, no, I think keeping removal is the line that wins. For Alutemu there, I guess the play that we could have seen been done differently was his use of the Iron Bark on that turn where he played it to not overdraw. Not Iron Bark, sorry, Bog Beam.
Bog Beam, yeah.
That could have given him one more minion off of the Mount Seller, which maybe one Taunt or one Griffin could have made a slight difference, but it's very tough to say.
It's so hard to say. Like you said, very fittingly for Druid, lots of branching paths that could have come down. It could have been a 0-mana spell off the top. Maybe he needed to high roll the Innovate to have any chance, so he took a risk and it didn't pay off. Either way, that game is out the way, and it does mean Alutemu is still left with his Druid, but now Kin is left with the Priest or the Shaman. Given what's left now for Alutemu in the Mage, the Druid, and the Shaman, do you think Kin ever pivots onto his Shaman, or is his Priest still just the best deck?
Given that it's Kin, I feel like he'd be want to queue Priest. But as far as it stands, I don't actually know how the Priest stacks up against these two remaining decks. I feel like it has a decent shot against Shaman, especially with the Owl package. But back in the day, Mage seemed to have a pretty good matchup against Res Priest because I don't think Alutemu was running Polymorph exactly, but even just effects like Amazing Reno can really mess with Res Priest board.
Yeah, I think looking at the stats here, it looks like Priest is actually a little bit negative against Paladin and Shaman so far across all the different divisions this week, which does strike me as a little bit surprising. It's a very small sample size, it's got to be said, specifically in APAC. But I guess the idea is that your totems, your AoE is not quite big enough once they start buffing up the totems to 4 and 6 health even.
Right. And I do think we heard that it will be the Shaman queued up for Kin here. So if anything, Kin definitely knows his stats and his matchups.
It would appear as such. This is a very favorable matchup for the Shaman, again, according to the stats. Thank you, Lorinda. You're the best. But that isn't necessarily factoring in when Alutemu could go off to a very explosive start here with the Glowfly Swarm.
Finally, a piece of removal kept. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that he's going second and already has a Glowfly.
Yeah.
But he has the Wrath. He has a Coin Overgrowth play. It's like one Fungal Fortunes away from greatness.
Yeah, Fungal Fortunes is the card he really, really needs here. And arguably Innovate, I suppose, on turn 3. Just Coin Innovate Glowfly would be very, very
are we going to
powerful.
see the Coin Power of the Wild for Panther here? I like it. I'm on board. Oh. Right. Still got a good answer for this. The Hero Power and Moonfire.
I think because he's got Wrath and Moonfire, depending on what's needed, I like holding back here because he can answer a totem. It's not like if he doesn't go for the Coin Power of the Wild, it won't do anything. Sure. And also keeping the Glowfly and then going Coin Power of the Wild, which means you're a turn further away from playing Glowfly, and you have hardly any spells then. I think it's just a little bit too disruptive for a game plan that could just easily pivot onto a Wrath.
Correct. Now that I'm looking at the hand again, I think I got a little bit too carried away by...
It was exciting.
Yeah, seeing the Innervate rising in its new form. Here again, we're seeing the use of Wrath when it could very well have been Moonfire Hero Power, which I still am a little bit confused as to why that's the piece of removal expended. Right.
Well, we're seeing a pretty clear game plan now from Alutemu.
No, it is a game plan because he's playing Glowflies.
Ah, yes.
And for Kin,
Flame 4 going to be going to Alutemu.
With these Planet Glide Glowdoms.
And the joke's dead.
I didn't take very long.
Yeah. Wasn't me by doing a really bad follow-up. Not at all. Now for Kin, he does, of course, have some pretty strong answers.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the double Manatide already coming down, in addition to Flame Tongue, Goblin Lackey, or Serpent Shrine. There's a lot that's going very right here.
I'm looking at the Totemic Surge. It just allows him to take value trades. With the Flame Tongue, sure. Oh my gosh, that is... Okay, so it's like Flame Tongue, Totemic Surge, Rush the Flame Tongue, he can play Storm's Wrath. This is insane. He can clear basically everything. Sorry, one Glowfly might survive.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I was looking first at Flame Tongue Evil Totem plus the Totemic Surge, but I fully agree that getting the buff on the Surging Tempest is definitely worth it.
Wow! He gets an Arcane Golem for his trouble. I mean, this works as well. He doesn't necessarily need to commit the Flame Tongue because he's getting the attack buff anyway. Mm-hmm. And this line clears off every single minion.
This is a disaster for Alutemu. He's just getting value traded by the Shaman. That does not happen often.
Correct. And that means his overflow is looking a lot worse. Okay, that's decent.
That's
He can
better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So draw,
I think
redevelop.
If you go for overflow here and heal up all their minions, it's just game over. You're never winning the board back.
And on the other side, I guess Alutemu's saving grace is that Kin's overload prevents him from playing Bloodlust this turn.
True.
I don't think he can hold back on the Glowfly.
What to do?
It at least can take 3 okay trades on the board.
I think he can actually, right? Can't he go Wrath plus Hero Power? That takes out 2 very big, powerful minions.
And then he takes a lot of damage the following turn.
It takes 8, I guess.
Yeah,
That's quite a lot.
The problem is he takes the damage and then you do the redevelop turn, you're taking another round of damage, and by that point Bloodlust is active. I think it had to be this turn.
But that is an insane top deck for Kin as well. The Splitting Axe to
Gosh.
keep the card draw going, keep the development going, and another swing to keep taking out these Glowflies.
Yeah, I don't see a way back into this for Alutemu outside of exactly, you know what I'm about to say.
Griffin!
Yep.
Yep, I agree. Mount Seller is definitely
Mount Seller
his best
innovate
chance.
Wrath into double Griffins would actually just put him back in this game. Just saying.
Okay.
He can cycle the Wrath. He can cycle the Wrath. I don't know.
Yeah. The choices are either you bite the bullet and play the overflow to heal everything back up, which is the downside, but hopefully find you your Mount Seller that little bit quicker, or he can just say, I have to draw it in the next couple of cards, so I'm just going to go with the Wrath anyway, which I think is probably smart. He needs to be incredibly optimistic if he's going to win this game.
Hero power down. 1 mana tide. Okay.
This is all setting up for an incredibly powerful Mount Seller off the top.
I'd like to see is hero power the 3/1 and maybe hold off on the Bog Beam in case if you get Mount Seller. But then again, just removing totems is game plan A against Shaman.
He's done a pretty good job of cleaning up what he can, and to be fair, Kin's development on this turn is not that powerful.
Yeah, it's just fine. I think I'd like to see him go wide and play the other Storm's Wrath, and then save Vicina for next turn because it would still be active.
I agree.
Problem is he can't play both Vicina redundant anyway. At that point, you don't even need Vicina, just Bloodlust.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be able to do that till turn 10 anyway.
So, is this going to be a miracle overflow for Alutemu or a Mount Seller off the top? So, overflow, get him not much with the mana remaining.
Yeah, it's just setting up for next turn. He can go Bog Beam here to try and stay alive, I guess. And then, with 2 Innovates, he should be able to pop off enough, even without the Bog Beam next turn, to stay alive.
His first question, though, should be calculating Bloodlust damage. Right. So if he Bog Beams the 3/3, there's left on board. Bloodlust gives another 12. And he's got the weapon for 23. And then there's the Lightning Bolt.
Right, so 2 Lightning Bolts would be lethal, even if he kills the 3/3. But I think he's so far behind anyway, he just needs to pray that that doesn't happen, and say, I kill the 3/3, that keeps me alive versus Bloodlust, and then maybe I can win.
Kind of crucial that Kin has only 7 mana, because the 8 mana would have unlocked so many possibilities here.
Yeah.
Bloodlust and Flame Tongue, or Bloodlust and Reflection. But Actually, good spot from Alutemu.
Wow.
Can actually remove even one more minion. I think this is very smart.
Okay, okay. I guess he does just have enough Mount Seller action on the following turn anyway, especially with the fungal.
It's really got to be some action to deal with this.
Yes, the Totemic Reflection as well is so devastatingly powerful. I think for Alutemu, the clear plan is just out of the window now. It's just trying to maybe clear enough to survive and then hit counter-lethal.
All right, how many griffins are you feeling?
I supply only
5?
the finest creatures.
Like, it has to be so much. The numbers with everything at 9 health as well is so awful.
He does have a power of the wild, I guess.
Crystal Power's a good draw.
So,
Yep.
no. It just isn't gonna get there.
I concede.
Valiant effort from Alutemu, but Kin ultimately is the player to advance. As our last player in the top 4, which means we have an even split among Japanese players and Hong Kong players for tomorrow.
I really could not be more happy. I think that it's a great story on both halves because we have Japan, obviously, who have been consistently the top performers here in the first portion of Asia-Pacific Hearthstone Grandmasters. There's a bit of an outlier, obviously, in Surrender from South Korea, who's outperforming everyone, but who knows? Maybe Glory could even turn that around this weekend. But then on the other half, from Hong Kong, I think we've seen consistency from Kin, very, very much so, across all series. He just hasn't really been making many mistakes at all. And then on the other side, much flashier from Blitzchung. He comes in out of nowhere, it feels like, after finishing bottom the first 2 weeks, and is just absolutely killing it this week.
It would be an incredible comeback story. And now that we have our top 4 all rounded out, I guess we can take a little review at what has gone down these past 2 days. Overall, I think we've seen some very crazy moments. Nothing beats Winged Guardian in my recent memory, but I'm glad to see that despite us seeing what seems to be very repetitive matchups, there were still many spots where the players could really show their skill in small optimizations and just ideal trades on board, fundamentals.
I agree. I've had fun this week. I think, to be perfectly honest, I was expecting it to be a lot less skill intensive than I think it's turned out to be here, given that Murloc Paladin is a fairly simple deck, Totem Shaman is just a fairly simple aggro deck as well. But I think, as I've seen it a little bit more, the way the decks match up against each other does mean you can't just rely on the fact that, Priest is the best deck out of these, I'm just going to queue it up. Or Mage is the best deck, I'm just going to queue it up. You really need to think about what your opponent has left and how they're going to play it if you want to end up coming out on top. And speaking of coming out on top, we have our top 4 for this week. Tomorrow, we are going to be playing out our semi-finals and finals here between Glory and Kin up first, and then Possessi and Blitzchung.
And the real man of the hour here, no discredit to the other 3, but they are locked into Division A. It's all about Blitzchung now, because if he manages to take a win over Possessi, that means he sneaks into Division A at the very last minute on the 8th slot, and the one praying that Possessi can absolutely win is Chonsu, because if Blitzchung manages to get to the finals, he would tie Chonsu at 7 points and also win the head-to-head tiebreaker by having the highest single week finish.
Yeah, I just cannot wait. I think it's going to be such an exciting week. Possessi and Blitzchung have both been playing very, very strong Hearthstone. And weirdly enough, despite the fact that Possessi is the newcomer to Grandmasters this year, it feels like Blitzchung is more so, given that we just haven't seen him in the first 2 weeks after his very poor finishes. But nonetheless, they've both been playing very, very well. And then on the other side, for Glory, his real chance here is to find Glory in taking the #1 spot in terms of points. Surrender looked utterly unassailable after his second place and then first place finish in the first 2 weeks. But now Glory has got a real shot of unthroning him.
Yes, Glory, as it stands, I think, is at 12 points. So if he heads to the finals, gets 13, which ties Surrender. If he wins the whole thing, gets a grand total of 14, which is higher than Surrender. And I'm not too sure about the other, probably in the top 3 Grandmasters as a whole.
Great stuff. Cannot wait for tomorrow. But of course, that is not us done for today. While Asia Pacific has finished, as usual, Raven and Sottle will be taking you through Europe after this, and then TJ and Frodan at the end for the Americas. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, Gia, but all I can say is I'm very excited for tomorrow.
Yeah, I just want to see some solid Hearthstone tomorrow, and I guess a pretty good send-off to Paladin and Shaman, as I feel we won't be seeing them very much after this weekend.
It could be a while indeed, but that is going to be us all done for today for Asia Pacific. If you've enjoyed, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you're notified whenever we go live with more Hearthstone Grandmasters action. But for now, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow for the conclusion of Asia Pacific Grandmasters.